What's going on, everybody? It is Thursday. We got a game tonight. I got Johnny Dales here as well as Rohan. We're going to be previewing this 49ers versus Seahawks. Not a must win, but must win game. Give us 17 seconds.
Back to throw Montana. Steps up, throws. And the 49ers have won the Super Bowl.
And now your host, Ryan Hensley.
Now your host, Ryan Hensley.
What's up, Johnny? How you doing today, brother?
Forgot to unmute my mic. I'm doing fantastic. Well, I will say I normally say fantastic. I wish the 49ers had won. It would be a little bit less stressful of a week, I think. If they had won a little bit, I guess I think you put it 100% correctly. It's not a must win, but it's a must win.
Right. If that makes any sense, I hope it does, but I feel like it does, right? Like it's not technically a must win. I think John Lynch talked about it like, and the ultimate must win means if you lose, you're out. But, and that's not the case, but it's as close to a must win as you can get without that being the situation. So normally on Thursdays, we do film review, but since today is ultimate preview game, because we have a game tonight, we're going to be talking about the game. Before we go forward and talk about this game, I have a couple questions for you in regards to what you're seeing. The first one is time to throw. Brock Purdy has the slowest time to throw in the entire NFL out of all starting quarterbacks, and you watch the film every week. My question to you is why? What are you seeing? Is it the offensive? People say it's the offensive line, so he has to run around, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case. People are saying the wide receivers aren't getting separation. So he has no one to throw to. Where is it just Brock looking for the big play? What are you seeing?
I think it's a multifaceted thing. I think it's all of the above. Is that what really is, I mean, if I was to boil it down to a simple answer, I would say this offense is very much out of rhythm. That they are not on the details of a lot of things, and that can come in with Brock Purdy not being on the details of moving through his progressions quickly enough sometimes, not all the time. It can be, a great example would be we were in the red zone. We had, it was, I believe, a second down. We're trying to hit Juwan Jennings on a pick route. It was a scissors concept, so he's running like a field post. It's a 10-yard post route, so he's going to go up 10 yards, or Brandon Ayuk was. He was running 10 yards. He's going to break towards the far goal post. Juwan Jennings is running a flag route, so he was going to go 10 yards and then break to the back pylon. And the Cardinals were in man coverage. The idea with that route is that, and they were using two safeties to help in the middle of the field. So you're trying to run interference. You're trying to run these guys as crossers so that Brandon Ayuk will end up being a pick on Juwan Jennings' man. They were not in time on their routes as they were going up, and Juwan Jennings runs into Brandon Ayuk. And Brock Purdy's, he's cocking, ready to throw, and he sees this disruption, so it's hold. He kind of panics because that's where the play is meant to go, and he backs up a little bit, and then he just throws the ball away because it was right before the half. It was one of those plays we ran right before the half, so he's trying to preserve time. But that ball should have come out in a second sooner, so that's now one play where it's a second later. You also have the very first drive. We stalled for a touchdown or for a field goal. We're trying to run a pick play. Again, they're running man coverage. We're trying to run a pick play to Kyle Juszczyk in the flat. Brandon Ayuk is supposed to come up and pick Juszczyk's man. He's thinking it's going to be the off-ball linebacker. It ends up being the outside linebacker. So his aim point is off. The guy is able to run over him, and he covers Juice the whole way. You're trying to get a pick play to receiver. Use your best target that they're trying to double with a safety to get somebody else open. Well, you don't execute that right. And so then Brock Purdy, he's looking for it, and that was one that he ended up trying to scramble outside and is tackled. And so you're seeing some plays are like that. Some plays are Brock is hanging on to some routes too long, and he needs to move on. Sometimes it is. There's nobody open in what you were trying to do. We had one like that at the end of I believe it was the end of that series before the half. We're trying to run a zone beater, and Debo is on a linebacker that's matching him in zone, and he doesn't win. the read says he goes there, he doesn't win, and Brock then ends up scrambling, rolling out to his right, throwing it away. No one was open after where the read said that he was supposed to go. Sometimes it is offensive line is allowing pressure and he's bailing. Other times he's feeling ghosts in that Arizona was bringing 5-man pressure a lot, and there was times he had a clean pocket and there's a receiver there, and he starts bailing a little. He starts moving around a little early. So you go, I see why each one. It doesn't make it excusable, but they need to be better in that. But it's all of the above. Is it sometimes it's one, sometimes it's the other. If it was just one thing, it would almost be easier to fix. When it's just, and that's why I say everything's out of rhythm. It's that I remember this during the 2014 Harbaugh year. I remember watching the film then and saying it felt like there was no one thing. It was just each play. It was death by 1,000 cuts. Each play was a different guy messing up. You can handle it if 9 guys all get their one mistake out in one play. But when you have 9 plays where one guy is making a crucial mistake and it's a different player each time, that is where it becomes maddening and frustrating because now it's just cascading bad.
Yeah. One thing I'm noticing, it does feel like Brock's bailing a little too soon sometimes. And then it becomes running around and taking forever to get a pass off. And I think that's what's altering these numbers, where if he stayed in there a split second longer, somebody's going to pop open. There was a play to Deebo Samuel. I believe Deebo was the first look, and he couldn't shake the linebacker. But and then Brock bailed and ran around. It was right on the goal line somewhere. It was for a touchdown. And instead of hanging in there, if he would have hung on a split second longer, George Kittle pops open in the back of the end zone. But instead of doing that, he's scrambling around and we don't get anything from it.
That was the same play I was talking about. So that play, it's a levels concept. You're stretching the middle zone player. They were in Tampa too, so that means the Mike is supposed to match the number 3 down the middle of the field. And so the read for Brock Purdy, because that's a vertical stretch, is you read the Mike. You're not necessarily looking at your receivers. You say, okay, wherever he goes, I'm going to throw it where he doesn't. Right. So we're running one player 12 yards deep in the end zone. Debo is 12 yards deep from the play, but I think it was 7 yards deep in the end zone. And Debo's running about a 4-yard under route. So it's a basic route paired with an under route. And the Mike turned to match Kittle on the basic route, on the deeper route. So the read dictates, okay, Mike's vacating the shallow middle. He's the only middle zone player, so I'm going to throw it to Debo. My bigger issue was how Debo ran his route. I'm like, bro, you are going against a linebacker in a hook zone, and he covers you over the middle. Like, that's you're being paid $23 million a year. You need to win on that route. You got to stem outside, move that linebacker. You can't just say, I'm going to run up here and break in and I'm going to be open, because he wasn't. And I don't blame Brock for not hitting Kittle in the back, because there's a safety over there. The Mike could drop back. It's where the read's supposed to go. There are other times though, like I think of there was a play, I'm trying to remember exactly where it was, that Brock would have had somebody spring open a little bit if he had stayed in there, but he got jumpy. And it was near the goal line. I remember he got jumpy on it, and I was like, man, you need to hang in there. I think of the very last play of the game for the offense, that that was a ball. He's hanging on BA too long. He's got to see that's a zero blitz and get the ball. That ball should have been out at a second, and he hung in on it till about 2.5 seconds, and we know what happened. That's where you got to get that ball out. Like, that is your blocking protection is going to be 3-3 because you have the running back, and that's so you can account for at least one extra rusher on either side, because you're running no huddle. You don't have the time to line up, count the numbers, and say, here it is. So we're just going 3-3. That way we can account for one extra guy on each side. If they bring 2 extra guys on one side, the quarterback that's his responsibility. Got to get it out hot. And that's what they did, and he didn't get it out hot. And that's the stuff that gets frustrating, of like, Brock, you have been better at this. You need to be better at that.
Yeah, I think it is. It's concerning for me because Brock Purdy, my only complaint ever really about Brock Purdy was, early on, was his first year, he wasn't really taking the top off. And then his second year, he did pretty much everything good. None of this was an issue. He wasn't bailing too soon. He was reading, going through his progressions. Everything was good. And then this year, it seems like all the stuff that he was good at, he's kind of struggling a little bit with now this year, which is I don't really understand it. I'm hoping he gets back on track because the Niners depend on it. I do have one other question for you before we kind of look forward to the Seattle game tonight. The offensive line. I've been a big proponent of the 49ers got to invest in a line. I don't like Jake Brendel. I don't like Colton McKivitz, but the reality is like they seem like they're doing okay as far as like pressures. If you look at the pressure rate looks high, but a lot of that is the pressure rate that Brock is creating or the wide receivers are creating or the offense is creating because he's not getting the ball out quick as opposed to they're just getting blown off the line of scrimmage. Is that what you're seeing when you're watching the film?
Yeah, and I think again it ties in with everything that it's a little bit of everything. Would we be okay with the amount of pressures they're giving up right now if we were not having the other issues? Absolutely. We would be saying, hey, the offense is still chugging along. We're doing fine. If the offensive line was just holding up and we were having these other issues, we would be probably somewhat okay with some of the other issues because then you wouldn't have the offensive line blowing some plays that you have. It's when it all starts when it all starts adding up and it's leading to losses. That's when it becomes, now we can't swallow it anymore. I think overall the offensive issues, I look to it as well. Brock has never played in an offense that was designed without having Christian McCaffrey. And I don't mean that in the, almost negative way of like, he can't play without Christian McCaffrey. More the entire offense was designed with Christian McCaffrey in mind, which is what any good offense would do if you have a player like that. I equate it to, if you look at the Rams from 1999 to 2003, they had some phenomenal players. Torrey Holt, I think, has been one of the most underrated receivers of all time. And when you look at his numbers from 99 to I think 2005, the guy was leading the NFL in receiving yards during that time. More than Terrell Owens, more than Randy Moss, more than Chris Carter. He was a lights-out receiver. Isaac Bruce, Hall of Fame guy. We had him for a year, in the twilight of his career. You had the best left tackle in the league, Orlando Pace. You had Kurt Warner, Hall of Fame quarterback. But if you took Marshall Faulk and you put, say, Corey Dillon or Stephen Davis on that team, that is not the greatest show on turf. That offense is not the same. They're still very good. They are still very good, but they are not the greatest show on turf. And that's really what we're seeing with this. Christian McCaffrey is very equivalent to Marshall Faulk. So you can't just replace him. And I think that's the growing pains they're trying to figure out of. We've had this luxury for so long. It's hard for, I think, some of the players to remember what it was like to not have Christian McCaffrey out there, for a George Kittle, for a Deebo Samuel. And I'm seeing it in some of their details. They used to be able to play a little bit more loose on their details because Christian McCaffrey created so much more space. They are not playing with the same details. They're moving a little bit more off their landmarks. They're not as quick to their points that they get to. They're having a little bit more space or a little less space than they normally would have, and it's tightening everything up. And that's, I think, what's causing Brock to hold on to the ball a little bit more.
Yeah.
Because you're not getting the clear, defined looks. Your players are playing a little bit tighter. They're having to make catches in tighter space. It's condensed everything. And it shouldn't be an excuse. I don't want it to come across like it's an excuse. I'm more going, the onus has to be put back on your other really well-paid players that they don't have that luxury anymore. You guys have to be on your P's and Q's. You have to be on your details. You have to take every rep seriously because Christian isn't there to pick up that 3rd and 6. You have got to be on your details.
One more question about that too, because you watch a lot of more film than I do. I do watch the all 22 back one time. But I know you really dive deep into it. One thing I noticed, and I tweeted it out, and then I noticed Kurt Warner tweeted it out at the same time, which was, it seems like when I'm watching the 49ers this year compared to last year, and you would know better than me, that the routes that the receivers are running are more congested in general. Like, I feel like they're running routes closer together than they should be. Maybe I'm wrong. And then the other thing I'm noticing too is a lot of the route combinations, it seems like more guys are going deep, intermediate, and there's not very many short options for Brock Purdy like there was in previous years. Seems like there's only maybe one short option most of the time, whereas it seemed like before there were more shorter options. Brock Purdy's only thrown 9 balls behind the line of scrimmage all season. And there was
Mhm.
games where he did that in one game last year. Are you seeing different route combinations, more like less spacing than normal? Because Kurt Warner said throughout the NFL, it seems like there's less spacing in the routes they're running.
Yeah, I think one, there's a few reasons for that, but I think it comes back to Christian McCaffrey again, is that, Christian McCaffrey was able to stretch the field in a different way. So if we think about, when we talk vertical stretching, it's like when you're writing on a chalkboard that it's up and down, right? So
Yeah.
that's the length of the field. When you have a Christian McCaffrey and he motions out and he's sitting in that formation, JT O'Sullivan cracked me up because for years, or for like a year, he was like, I hate this motion. I don't understand why you're doing it. Why is he 5 yards off the ball? And then over time, he was like, I kind of dig it now. And I kind of like it because what it did is it drew so much. You want Christian McCaffrey 5 yards behind this line of scrimmage because they can't give him 10 yards of space. He's going to eat that up and he's going to use it and he's going to break a tackle. So putting him at the line of scrimmage, you actually created less space. You move him farther back. Those underneath zone defenders are going to come up towards him because they have so many eyes. So the more shallow you keep him, the more the defenses creep up. And then if you have like Deebo Samuel, who's got a lot of straight line speed running down the field, or Brandon Ayuk running down the field, now you're really stretching that intermediate area. And so it seems like you have tons of space in there. And we see Deebo and Ayuk and Jennings hitting these big crossers, right? And these digs inside there. Now all of a sudden you say, we don't have that magnet to pull it towards the line of scrimmage because Christian McCaffrey's not there. So now we're going to try and create the same amount of space. Well, we have to go vertical. So we're going the other direction. So we're trying to run everybody deeper so that we can create that intermediate space. Well, then you planned maybe as one of your plans, but then Ricky Pearsall gets shot right before the start of the season. And that guy who I had talked about it since he was drafted, he's a guy you could put in the slot and run straight down the field, and he's going to drive that middle safety off. Well, he gets shot. So you don't have that. And Brandon Ayuk is a little slow to start the year. Deebo's a little banged up. Who do you have to put inside to now accomplish that? They're trying to do it with George Kittle last game.
You need to bring Cowing in, honestly.
Well, then he got a shoulder injury. They brought him in, and then he got a shoulder injury.
He's back this year now, though. Yeah, or he's back this game, excuse me.
Yeah, so I expect to see him more in this game because they were like, well, we're trying to get him on the details of the routes, and then they said, no, we've got to get him back in because we need to stretch the field some way. I love Jordan Mason. He's not drawing that same attention. I think, and then they're also
isn't there a way to like he's not drawing the attention, but part of that has to be because they're not passing to him, right? Like if you start passing to him and using him in that manner, then maybe he will start drawing more attention. Don't you think that factors in as well? Because I don't think he's had too many opportunities catching the ball.
I think what they need is a little bit better of a pressure plan. In that is because a lot of times he's on a check and release. And again, before, teams didn't blitz the 49ers as much because if you did, you were going to end up with Christian McCaffrey one-on-one. Or he was such a good blitz pickup guy that he would pick up that blitz, and now Brock Purdy had a lifetime to throw back there. Now I think they're more willing to blitz, and they're more willing to do that. They're more willing to, because when they do that, now that's going to occupy Jordan Mason. There's times that we've sent Jordan Mason out, and to help account for some of that pressure, we keep George Kittle in. And so now all of a sudden, again, that's what you're seeing in that there's not as many underneath routes. They're check and releases. So if that guy's occupied with a blitzer, he's not checking and he's not releasing out into the pattern, and they're just a little bit late on that. And I think again, what you're talking about as well is it seems like the routes are so much more congested. That's what I was meaning in that these guys are just a little off on their landmarks. They're a little off on their details. They're drifting too much into coverage, and the route distribution is not good. Again, because they didn't use this time last year, they didn't have to be 100% exact on everything. They could play a little loose with it because, again, Christian McCaffrey drew so much attention. I would like to see Jordan Mason involved in the passing game a little bit more. On the other side, I want to see him more consistently hit the right holes. When he does it, we've seen the production. It's great, but we have too much boom or bust. It seems like it's either a 20-yard gain or we're getting a loss of 1 yard or only a 1 yard gain. And so many of those really are him not reading the zone blocking quite right, or
Yeah.
the details of the running game. We're seeing it with Isaac Garendo. Really, honestly, I think our run blocking is the best that it's been for probably 3 years. I think this is one of the better run blocking offensive lines we've had, mainly because of the addition of Dominic Pooney. And the way that they're blocking together is really good. We should be getting even more production than we are getting.
Mm-hmm. Real quick before we dive into this game, I'm going to ask you, like, what do you think the 49ers need to do in this particular game from a strategic standpoint? But these are my plays for the evening. Go to Underdog Fantasy. The link is actually not fantasy anymore. It's just Underdog. The link is in the description. It's in the chat. These are my plays for the night. I think the 49ers are going to get back to running the ball more. So I got Jordan Mason over 18 rushing attempts. Kenneth Walker is a hell of a running back. I got him going over 63.5 rushing yards, and I have Brock Purdy scrambling for at least 7.5 rushing attempts. So these are my plays for the night. What do you think, Johnny? You like these ones?
I do. I think it's great. I think Jordan Mason is averaging something like 21 carries a game. And just looking back on how the Lions beat them is that they ran and ran and ran on them. Now Jared Goff also went 16 for 16, but so much of that had to do with the Seahawks were getting bullied in the run game. They were just getting out physicaled, and they were trying to rally so much at the running attack. Most of Jared Goff's completions in that game were off play action. It wasn't like he was just dropping back and dicing them up, for 100% completion percentage. And they didn't throw that much. 16 passes. So, I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Jordan Mason. You need to see a heavy dose of Jordan Mason. It'll be interesting for me to see Shanahan's approach. Historically, against Pete Carroll, we would usually go wide zone heavy in the first meeting and then split zone, which is a counter to your wide zone in the second meeting, because it was almost like you were planning for them to have accounted for that, and they would almost flip flop. But now we're going against McDonald, and it'll be interesting to see how they approach that. I think they're gonna do a lot of what the Lions did. If I was Shanahan, I would be putting up clip after clip after clip of the Lions bullying the Seahawks and saying, guys, we can do this. We have to do this. You will do this.
Yeah, I agree. Those are my plays for the day. Go to Underdog. Use promo code Hensley. They will match up to 1,000 of your initial deposit, I believe, is the promotion right now. Don't quote me on that. They change often. But those are my plays for the night. All right, Johnny. Well, I want to ask you about this game coming up. What do you think the 49ers need to do? You kind of touched on it a little bit right there, but what do you think the 49ers need to do to win this game?
They have got to be more physical. I mean, that it seems so, like, that sounds like a trope in football, of you got to be more physical than the other guy. Old Mike Singletary. We're going to be physical with an F. But against this Seahawks team, again, you look at the games they've won, you look at the games they've lost. The games they've lost, they were pushed around. They were bullied. They got beat up. You lean on them. That's what you have to do. You can't walk in there and let DK Metcalf be a bully on you. Let Kenneth Walker be a bully on you. This will be a very long game. And it'll be a game like the Arizona game, like the LA game. LA came in and said, we are going to match San Francisco's physicality. And they did. And it was a game that we shouldn't have lost, but we did in the fourth quarter. You can't have that happen. You need to lean on these guys early. It's not a game where, against the Cardinals, I almost wanted them to come in and be like, hey, we're gonna attack you and get up early and put you behind and then take advantage of that. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for, come out in that first drive and score in 5 plays. Come out in the second drive and score in 4 plays. I'm not looking for that. I'm looking at that first drive, let it be a 10-play drive. Let that second drive be a 12-play drive and just beat them down and keep doing it. Keep the ball out of Geno Smith's hands beat them down. You want them giving up mentally because they say we can't do anything. They are just going to keep doing this and we can't stop it. Break them mentally, and then you storm to a win because you can't let this be a tight game. We have not been a tight game team this year.
Yeah, tight game, especially when this is my X factor for the game. My X factor for this game is kicker Matthew Wright, who the 49ers signed off the couch to replace Jake Moody. He hasn't kicked since 2022, and the game could come down to this guy, man, Matthew Wright. How are you feeling about that?
I feel like you need to not let it be there. It just gives me shades of was that 2019 when Robbie Gould got hurt and we went to Seattle and lost in Seattle. I want to say it was 2019 because I remember Dante Pettis was. It was 2019 because Emmanuel Sanders got hurt early in that game, bruised ribs. I want to say Dante Pettis was our number one receiver that game. I think Debo was out. George Kittle ended up going out, and I forget the kicker, but we missed a kick in overtime. It was a 42-yarder, and it went into the tunnel off the left, almost hit Jennifer Lee Chan. I remember her posting a video of it when because she was sitting in the tunnel at the time, and the ball came right by her head. Don't have a repeat of that. Do not go into Seattle and let the game come down to the kicker you signed off the street making a field goal.
Yeah, man, that's the X factor for me in this game. It could either be won or lost by a guy we've never even seen in a 49ers uniform until tonight. I want to throw out some numbers for everybody. The 2024 49ers are scoring just 25.2 points per game, and that includes some defensive touchdowns and special teams touchdowns, one from Demo, one from Fred Warner as well. And they're allowing 21.2 points per game. They're scoring 25.2, which is 10th in the NFL, but right behind them are the Seahawks scoring 24.4, which is 11th in the NFL, and the Seahawks are allowing just 22.8 points per game. So the numbers are very close between these teams. I feel like it's going to be a close game. That's my prediction, and I think it's unfortunately going to be a kicking game. So we're going to see what Matthew Wright can do this evening. I think I have 2017 is my final score, and more field goals than I would like. Hopefully Matthew Wright becomes a hero for the 49ers tonight. How do you see this game going? What do you think the final score is?
I think the final score is going to be 24-17. That's what I think is going to happen. The 49ers, they need to win this game. They have to win this game. They have to. I think it's going to be a game where the 49ers actively try and reduce the amount of possessions that each team has. I think they feel like if this is a game that comes down to 6 possessions by each team, then they feel good about that. That they don't think they're going to give up more than 17 points off 6 possessions. If it's a game that comes down to 8 and 9 possessions on each side, that's when they get in trouble. I don't expect them or think they can hold the Seahawks and that passing attack to only 17 points or even 24 points on 9 possessions. I just don't see it happening. So you've got to take some possessions away, either by turnover or by ball control with running the ball. So it's going to be a grinded out ice bag ugly game. I think that's what their plan is going to be, and hold it that. I'm okay if you keep this a 6 possession game and you end up only allowing 3 scores on those 6 possessions. One score every other possession. I'm okay with that with a 6 possession game. I think you can do it. I think the Seattle defense, if you have to try and score on them 9 times, they're going to take the ball away at least once, maybe twice. I think that I don't think they're the kind of defense that you can't move the ball on them, you can't score on them, but they will cause a turnover at some point. And that's again why you reduce the amount of possessions, and each one is going to become more valuable. So you got to protect the football, reduce the amount of possessions, lean on them, and be more physical. That's how you win this game.
Agreed, sir. Make sure everybody, if you're not yet, you should be subscribed to Johnny Dale's Football Academy on YouTube. He does film breakdowns every week. Really good stuff. Not a lot of people doing it quite like him, if anyone. So make sure you are subscribed to Johnny Dale. I'm going to run my commercial. I'm going to come back with Rohan, but I forgot to tell you guys, I got my sponsor, Chris Mukherjee, attorney who specializes in business law, estate planning, and personal injury. He's going to come on at the very end of the show for 5 or 10 minutes and give you guys some free tips and I can't say legal advice, free legal tips. So stick around to the end of the show and then give me 17 seconds after this commercial. Rohan Chakravarthi will be on. Johnny, thank you so much, buddy.
Absolutely. Always.
Hensley Real Estate and Mortgage has been serving all of California since 2009. I would love to help you and your family. Whether you're buying, selling, financing, or refinancing, please reach out. I'd love to help. Visit RyanGHensley.com for more information. What the heck? I should have popped. There he is.
I was like, did I have a? I mean, we good.
That was horrible. I cut Johnny off on the commercial, and then I didn't have you ready to come in. My fault, guys. I'm still learning. As I don't think I've put in 10,000 hours. I've been doing this 2 years. Give me a break. After like 4 years, it'll be seamless. Rohan, man, how you doing, brother?
Doing good. I've got in a new place today, but nonetheless, the show must go on. We've got 49ers football here on Thursday, and I'm glad to be here.
New place for you, out by college or what?
No, I'm actually on a little bit of a trip. I'm out on the East Coast today, so having a little fun over here.
East Coast, where at? Tell me. Can we know that? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Right.
I'm in New Jersey. We've got Wisconsin's got a football game out here versus
Wow.
Rutgers on Saturday. So I'm here with some family, getting to go out and watch that game on Saturday.
New Jersey. All right, cool, man. Well, I'm glad to have you. As always, I got some questions for you. You are an encyclopedia of football knowledge. Here's my question for you, man. Going into this game tonight, what are some of the key matchups that you're looking for?
I think one key matchup we've kind of seen the last few years, when it comes to Seattle versus San Francisco, is the 49ers putting Charvarius Ward on DK Metcalf and allowing him to kind of travel. Metcalf is obviously a good receiver, but the 49ers have found a way to defend him pretty well. Ward obviously had the best of him in the last matchup. He noted that this week. The reason, though, that this is a key matchup for me isn't because of Ward's past performance, is because of how he is right now. Charvarius Ward has not started the year good. And this is coming from a guy who has been a pretty stout advocate for him as an underrated corner, and maybe even the most underrated player on this team last year. But he is clearly injured. I mean, it might be the knee issue. It might still be recovering from the groin issue. I don't know what it is. He does not look like himself. And so because of that, are the 49ers going to still do what they did last time and place Ward on Metcalf one-on-one? And if so, how is the result kind of going to come out? The other thing is, staying on the defensive side of the ball, the San Francisco 49ers are now not going to have Jordan Elliott, right? That's a pretty big loss when you look at the run defense. And Kenneth Walker averages around 5.5 yards per carry. He's been on an insane tear to start the year. And, I know he got hurt one game, but he's going to be fully healthy for this one. He's a good running back. The Seahawks have a good passing attack, but they're going to look to run the football in this one as well. And I think that that's going to be a pretty important, matchup. Niners run D versus Kenneth Walker.
Yeah, man, I think that is a good one. What about the vice versa? Like the Seahawks are missing quite a bit of players on their defensive line as well as linebacker, at least from an injury standpoint. Do you think it's a big Jordan Mason night?
I have to think so, just because the biggest matchup probably for the 49ers on offense is Mike McDonald versus Brock, right? I mean, we remember last year against the Baltimore Ravens, Brock, one of his worst games, if not the worst game of his career, 18-32. He has 4 interceptions, in that one. And again, this is a much different Seattle team than that Ravens team. The best defense in the league last year, McDonald anchored it, but the Seahawks have not looked that bad this year, right? Defensively, and it's still a Mike McDonald defense where you're going to, especially now without some of those key pass rushers, Byron Murphy out, Uchenna Nwosu going on IR, you're probably going to expect him to dial up some blitzes in unique ways. And so I think to ease some of the pressure, it's going to be a bit of a Jordan Mason game, knowing that Seattle struggles, right, against the run. And also they have a couple of guys now who are going to be out.
Yeah, they got to establish the run in this game for multiple reasons. One, because I think that's the weakness of the Seattle defense. 2, because of what you said in regards to taking the pressure off of Brock Purdy. And there is a lot of pressure. He's coming off a bad game. If we're just keeping it real, it wasn't a good game from Brock Purdy. All season, it's been a little funky for Brock Purdy. And the head coach of the Seahawks is Mike McDonald, who gave Brock Purdy fits as the Ravens defensive coordinator. Now, they don't have the same personnel on the Seahawks defense, and a lot of them are injured right now. So I don't expect that kind of night from Brock Purdy. But it would be huge for Brock Purdy to get the monkey off his back, get back to playing football the way that we're used to seeing Brock Purdy play, as well as beat Mike McDonald's defense and show everyone that he has what it takes to do that. So I think that's humongous. I want to ask you about Geno because Geno, 49er fan base, gives him a lot of hate, but he actually has a really high completion percentage, higher than Brock Purdy. He leads the NFL in yards right now. He's actually playing pretty damn good. Now, where he's similar to Brock Purdy, at least their offense is he only has 5 touchdowns. Brock Purdy has 6. So they're moving the ball really well. He's getting a lot of yards, but they're not putting it in. What have you seen from Geno this year? And should the 49ers be concerned about Geno? Oh, we can't hear you, brother.
We're good now. Geno's had a good start to the year, and he's a quarterback who a lot of people like to give flack for sure. He's a guy who I don't know, some people like to discredit just because of the storyline, and also if you're a 49er fan, because the Niners have beaten Geno Smith every time they've played him. The Niners are on a 5-game winning streak here in this matchup against Seattle, and I think that is going to be another thing that they're going to look to extend. But when you look at Seattle's offense, 1, Geno Smith's throwing the ball at a high clip. 2, Kenneth Walker's running the ball at a high clip. And 3, when they get inside the red zone, while Geno might not be scoring touchdowns, Seattle's 10th in the league, scoring touchdowns on 63.6% of their red zone drives. So they're able to score the ball once they get into the red zone as well. So that kind of makes for a good matchup. They had a good one this past, this past weekend, where I believe they got to the red zone a lot or something like that, or in the last few games. They've unfortunately now lost 2 in a row, so they're on a bit of a downturn. But that offense, you can kind of see what that offense is kind of supposed to look like. They've got a good passing attack. They hired a new OC, who I think is still kind of finding his way in Seattle. But you've got a new OC. You've got 3 good weapons. Jackson Smith and Jigba has now really come together and is starting to get a lot of playing time and a lot of action in the receiving game specifically. And you've got a good rushing attack. So again, when you have all of those components, it feels like this one could end up being a trench game. Can the Niners create pressure without some of their defensive linemen? And if so, are they going to also be able to hold up against the run against a offensive line for Seattle that looked bad last year, but is healthy and is looking better this year?
Yes, sir. I want to get this super chat from Dutch. Sorry for the delay, sir. Just kind of saw this. He says, we got to execute in the red zone. We're second in the league in field goal attempts and only 4 rushing touchdowns. Kyle has to run the damn ball, and I think I agree with that, man. Yeah, definitely some red zone issues. Rohan, I don't know if you agree with it. What are your thoughts on that?
And, this is something I actually looked really deep into. I was like, why the hell are the 49ers struggling in the red zone? I wrote an article on it this week. And interestingly enough, running the ball is the key reason why the 49ers aren't efficient in the red zone. And that might sound weird. But where the Niners really struggle is you get inside the 10-yard line, you've got a goal-to-go situation, you've got 3 downs to score to get 10 yards and score a touchdown, and they are failing to do so. Last year, when they got in the red zone, they ran the football, and they ran the football well. Christian McCaffrey inside the 10 averaged 3 yards per carry. That is one of the top marks in the NFL. It's really hard to run the football inside the 10. McCaffrey was getting there. Jordan Mason this year, on 8 carries inside the 10-yard line, has 12 yards. He's averaging 1.5 yards per carry. And so that immediately backs you up on 2nd and 3rd downs where you can't run the football. You're not seeing that efficiency, and the Niners are really struggling. And so that's the biggest issue. And then you match that with, well, Brock Purdy's efficiency is clearly down. He threw, 60%. He had a 60% completion rate last year when he was inside the 10-yard line. This year, that number is down, I believe, to 43%. And the 43% is really helped by George Kittle. To the receivers themselves, Juwan Jennings, he has 1 catch on 5 targets inside the 10-yard line. Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk have 1 catch on 2 targets each inside the 5-yard line. So it's 3 for 9 to your receivers. When you go back and look at last year, Why is there a struggle? Well, Christian McCaffrey didn't just run the ball. He had a significant amount of volume in the passing game inside the 10-yard line. Christian McCaffrey had 6 catches on 8 targets, and he had 4 touchdowns on those. All 3 of those numbers led the 49ers inside the 10-yard line in the passing game. So it's not like he was just getting the ball in the run game. He was the number 1 option in the passing game, and the Niners clearly don't have that. Jordan Mason has 2 targets total in the red zone the entire year, regardless of where it is. And so you're really seeing the Niners miss Christian McCaffrey, not only because of him in the run game, but also him in the passing game. And they're not being able to run the football that well. That's hurting their passing efficiency. They're clearly missing out, and they need to execute. It's unacceptable with the amount of players that they have that they're not being able to execute.
Good stuff. Emiliano off topic wants to know if Jesse's okay in that hurricane. Yes, he's good, man. Some trees down in the neighborhood, a little flooding, but he's good. Oh, I love these. Daniel Martinez says Ryan is a hater. Daniel, I love these comments, but because it allows me to extend an invitation. Hit me up, man. DM me. My Twitter messages is open. You can email me, ryan@ryangensley.com, and you can come on my show and debate me about something I've actually said. I would love that. I love it when people throw comments out like this. And now what I'm asking you to do is back it up. Come on my show. Let's debate and let's talk about it. Appreciate it. I want to do this, my friend Rohan. The 49ers will lose if. Why will they lose? Tell me if the 49ers lose, it's because of
That's
what?
a good one. The 49ers will lose if they continue the trends from the last 2 games. More importantly, they'll lose if they'll have a 10-point lead. Don't get to a 10-point lead. Get it to 12. Get it to 13. Don't get – no, I'm kidding. The 49ers, they're going to end up losing, though, this game if we talk about a couple of the things. One, if you struggle in the red zone, you're not going to win this game because the Seahawks have not struggled in the red zone. And 2, if you're not going to be able to run the football – if you're not going to be able to defend the run, it's going to be a struggle because this is going to be a game where it seems like the Niners want to impose physicality. And so if you can't impose physicality on the defensive end, it's going to be more of a back and forth than you'd like. And the Niners thus far have really struggled with some of those back and forths. Their wins, they've blown teams out. They beat the Jets 32-13 or something like that in week 1. I forget the exact score. And then they beat, obviously, New England 30-13. But in the games where it's become to 1 score, you've really started to struggle. So you want to make sure you come out firing and you keep the momentum and keep the pressure on. They can't defend the run as well. They defend the pass at a pretty high rate. So run the football and see what you can do from there.
Yeah, I agree, man. We say they got to run the football. I think that was clear against the Cardinals. It was clear. It's clear coming into this game. I guess the question is, will he actually do it? What do you think the 49ers plan of attack is? Outside of running the ball, what are the keys for them to win the game? Like, what do they need to do?
I'm really curious, actually. I know we're saying run the football. I'm really curious if they come out and they start throwing on early passing downs because what will Mike McDonald want? He wants them to throw the football because he wants them to fall into the trap of his defense. So I'm wondering, do they stack the box? Do they go 7-8, in the box on first and second downs, force the 49ers to throw the ball, and then throw these exotic looks at Brock Purdy and see what sticks and what doesn't? I think that there's a lot of different ways it goes about it, but ultimately, what I think happens for San Francisco is you're going to be able to create some explosive plays. They haven't created as many on the ground, whereas when they had Christian McCaffrey. But I think if you set up the run well, you're going to be able to create explosive plays. A lot of people have noted there's not as much play action this year. It's tougher to run play action when you're not, when teams aren't really selling against the run. They're going to go after the quarterback on those play actions, knowing the way that they've been able to defend so far. And so that's the tough part. It's more pure drop back game, and that's where the Niners need to improve. So I think that that's going to be a denominator. If the Niners can kind of get enough going on the ground to where they can open up some of those shots, that's where they're going to end up flourishing because they've got an advantage with their receivers against the Seattle corners, apart from Devin Witherspoon.
I want to ask you, Mitchell and Ness says, no, this team is a mess, can't hide it anymore. Do you agree? Do you think this team is a mess? Do you think they can get back, or do you think this is just kind of what we're seeing is who they are so far?
Do I think this team is a mess? Yes. Do I think that they can get back? Yes. This team is not a good football team right now. I mean, they'll tell you that themselves. if you think that the product the Niners have put on the field the last few weeks is good football, that's not true. That I'm not going to say that they don't have, the makings of a playoff team. They're very likely going to make the playoffs. They're very likely probably going to win the division even. They're favored to do so right now. But this team is not good right now. This team is not a good football team. They're benefiting from a pretty poor NFC conference or an NFC West divisions thus far. And that's why, there's a lot of issues. A lot of people say, "Oh, why are you worrying so much? Oh, why this or why that?" I think that that's wrong. You can't tell people that they don't have a right to worry when the team isn't playing good football. I think more importantly, it's important to note there are issues right now. Address the issues, but also point out that there is a clear path to success if those issues get fixed. These aren't issues that can't be fixed. The Niners had a solution last year. It's just you've got to get back to maybe some of the bread and butter that you've been able to be successful at. And if that isn't working this year, you have to find the adjustments. Ultimately, I think the Niners will be able to get that done. You're able to, end up going back on the right track. It's just you have a tough schedule ahead of you. And with you putting this type of film out there week in and week out, you don't know which games are going to be the winnable games and which games are going to be, the slug it out games, just like this one.
And Texan by nature 88 says the problem is Kyle, not the team. How much of this stutter from the gate or problems that the 49ers had so far do you blame on coaching versus roster?
Yeah, it's a tough one because when you blame Kyle Shanahan, you're ignoring the fact that the Niners have been extremely successful inside the 20s. They get to the red zone at a high clip. They get to the red zone almost as good as any other team in the NFL. Their yards, they're throwing for a lot of yards. They're running for a lot of yards. They aren't even creating that many turnovers set aside for this past weekend when they had the 3 interceptions. And then when you just look at it, they're just not finishing drives. And it's weird because when you have such a small array of red zone clips, you could break down every single one and see a little bit of a different trend for a lot of them. But Kyle Shanahan's going to have to find a way to, if given that he's the offensive guy, he's going to have to find a way for this team to be able to score with their weapons. Does that mean you throw a little bit more when you're at between the 10 to 20 yard line, whereas where they're running, just because you have the threat of creating an explosive play between the 10 to 20 when you have a guy like Brandon Ayuk? What is the solution? That's what Kyle Shanahan's got to figure out. And then on the defensive side, a lot of people are pointing it out. I think it's more personnel related. I mean, you don't have a really good third linebacker right now. Your third cornerback had a real solid game and then gave up one of the bigger plays of the game, on that 3rd and 5 to Marvin Harrison. You got guys playing through injury. Charvarius Ward pretty clearly playing through injury. The safety position has probably not looked as good as you'd like. Overall, Hufanga didn't look as strong. Mustafa's a rookie. He makes some mistakes and then makes some splash plays. Jair Brown looking here and there. He's not as bad as I'd say people say, but I don't think he's been as strong as you'd hope that second-year leap. I think the defensive side is more personnel related. The offensive side is just more you've got to find a way to score in the red zone because everything else is working. It's just the red zone issues clearly are hampering the team right now.
Agreed. Yes, the biggest problem with the team, I think, in general, over everything else, it's the red zone, not being able to capitalize. Shout out to Dutch for the super chat. Says, I think tonight will tell you who we are. Yeah, I mean, it's the test, right? The reason why I'm gonna, and we'll get to predictions before I let Rohan go, but the reason why I think the 49ers are gonna win this game is because they have to. And the desperation's got to be there. The 49ers need this more than the Seahawks do. What's interesting, too, is if they win this game, all of a sudden they're tied for first in the NFC West, despite the bad start to this season that they've had so far. Who has to step up, Rohan? Who has to step up in this game? Who's been struggling this season or maybe last game that just really needs to step up for the 49ers to win this game, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question because when you look on both sides of the ball, certain players are starting to step up. Brandon Ayuk had a huge game this past weekend. It was pretty clear that he was the guy. I'm going to point to the other stars. I know Brandon Ayuk got paid, and I understand that he had a slow start to the year. Deebo Samuel's effort has to step up. I mean, that's something that I noticed 7 or 8 times, last week. Even in the red zone, if Deebo Samuel, is the first read on a play, but he's slow getting off the line of scrimmage and he's slow getting into his route, the timing of the play is already killed. It's not like you can go progression 1, 2, 3, 4 in the red zone. They as soon as something is open, it immediately gets shut down just because there's not that much space for you to create in the red zone. He's got to step up. I also think George Kittle's got to step up. I think, yeah, when you look at the outlook of things, he's older. He has a lot of roles on this team. I don't know that his blocking is as good as it's been in the past. It's, again, the wear and tear on the body, but you can't drop passes. And especially you can't drop passes in the red zone. I think he's got to be a little bit more reliable as the pass catcher just because the Niners realize right now their best weapon in the red zone is George Kittle. They're throwing to him a ton. He's got the most targets inside the 10-yard line for the team. He has 4 catches on him. He just dropped the 5th ball. They're going to have to go to him. He realizes that it's his turn to step up here on offense.
Yeah, I think Debo's a good one. I have not been in Debo, I believe. I'm trying to remember the statistics. I don't have him dialed up, but he was in the 40s and the 50s as far as forced tackles missed when he gets the ball in his hand. Now he's at 6%, 1/7 of the level he was playing at before as far as being able to break tackles and accumulate that yak. Debo just doesn't look like himself, and I don't know if it's injury or if he's just, hate to say it, washed. I don't know. And usually Debo does tremendous against the Seattle Seahawks, so maybe he'll come out and ball out. So that's definitely a guy that needs to step up. There's one guy I think needs to step up, but honestly, I wish he would step down, but I don't think he's going to. So step up is Devondre Campbell has been not good, man. And I would love to see the 49ers start one of these young dudes instead, throw out Tatum Bethune or somebody else, man. Play more D Winters, Bethune, play Jalen Graham, who you guys just got back off the Commanders practice squad. Play somebody else besides Devondre Campbell. But if you're not going to, which you're not going to, we know that, then he needs to step up, man, and play at the level that the 49ers were expecting him to play at. Do you agree with that?
No, I agree. And the weird part about Campbell, it's not even like he's missing assignments or he's in the wrong position. He's trying to execute his assignment. He's just failing. It's a lot of times. For example, the run to Kyler. It's not his fault, right? There's a different look the Niners threw out. A couple of guys miss on that on the 50-yard run. Campbell's supposed to just be able to set the edge there. That shouldn't be a 50-yard run. That should maybe at max be a 5-yard run. If Kyler's able to hit the sideline, he's just not. He just doesn't execute there. And so to me, it's just he's not executing at all at a high level. And it's just he's tasked with doing his job. He's not deviating from the plan. It's just he's not being able to execute the plan that's asked of him. And that really drops the linebacker standard, which is unfortunate when you see how Fred Warner plays.
Yeah, and I talked about this is a good moment to plug the podcast. I don't know if you guys know. Let me go ahead and plug this real quick. I'll play it for you, and then we'll talk about it. Why is Devondre Campbell still starting at linebacker? I mean, I think it was pretty obvious. Not only in the preseason, it was obvious. After game 1, after game 2, it was obvious. They need to replace Campbell. I think that's long overdue and a quick, easy fix. Throwing one of these young guys to replace them, see what they can do. They can't do worse. And you drafted some replacements. What about Tatum Bethune? What about Jalen Graham, who you just signed off the Commanders practice squad? What about Winners? These are really young guys that I would like to see step in and get a chance, because what Campbell's doing is not sufficient. All right, that was a clip from one of the latest episodes of the best 49ers podcast. We're trying to get that SEO, obviously, but the podcast is actually rising quickly through the charts. I don't know if that's what they say, but it's Grant and I 5 days a week, 30-minute podcast. Make sure you guys go and subscribe and download it. I would appreciate it very much. We are in 2 weeks. I think we're number 7 or 8 right now, and which is great. So make sure you guys check that out every morning. It drops around 6:30 a.m., I believe. So go check that out. All right, Rohan, man. And by the way, I'm Chris McCurgy, my sponsor, attorney, is going to give us some tips at the 10 o'clock mark for about 5-10 minutes. We get free legal tips, not advice. Can't say that, but tips. He'll be here. He's a sponsor and he's an attorney, so stick around for that at the end of the show. But Rohan, man, what are you feeling right now, man? You've never been shy to tell me your true opinion about the outcome of the game and give me your prediction. How do you see this game going? What's the score?
Yeah, it's been a weird year for me. I've been pretty confident with this team through 5 games, and they keep just shooting me in the back. And this is me, a guy who, if I feel like they're going to lose a game, I feel like they're going to lose a game. But I feel pretty confident that they should win each of these the first 5 games. And right now, I'm still feeling confident that they beat the Seahawks just because they should. But am I surprised if this ends up being a similar game as it's been the last few weeks? No, I wouldn't be, just because the Seahawks are a well coached football team and they've got the personnel to kind of, inflict damage on the Niners. We'll see how it ultimately goes. I think the Niners win. I think it's going to be low scoring. I'll go 20-17.
That's my prediction, sir. Same exact score prediction I
Oh,
have.
snap. Okay.
Yeah, man.
There we go.
2017. I agree. What's the X factor to you in this game? How do you who's gonna win or lose this game?
It might be a weird, thing to point out. I think it's honestly going to be the middle 8. It's something that I've kind of looked at, but when you have a game as close as this, a game where it might be a little bit more of a grind out game, you want to win the last few minutes of the second quarter, and you want to win the first few minutes of the third quarter. If the Niners get the ball to start the third quarter, you want to try and find a way to double up, right? You're going to want to score at the end of the second quarter, and you're going to want to start the third quarter with the bang. But if they don't end with the ball, the message is the same. You're going to have to find a way to either score at the end of the second quarter or stop Seattle and then get some momentum going just right out of the gate in the third quarter that helps sets the tone for the rest of the second half. They didn't have that last week. They didn't create the momentum coming into the second half, and then they found it just slipping away from them throughout the rest of the game, right? You can't let that happen in this one.
Yeah, man. I unfortunately think it's the kicker, Matthew Wright for the 49ers, who they just pulled because the reason why I say that is because I feel like it's going to be a tough, low scoring game. Both teams, I think, are going to be trying to run the ball against each other, and therefore the score is going to be low. Both teams struggle in the red zone. Geno Smith has 5 touchdowns. Brock Purdy only has 6 touchdowns. So I think it's going to come down to the kickers, and the 49ers kicker. We have no idea how he's going to perform. He hasn't kicked the ball in over 2 years. He did okay. I think it was 40 for 47 2 years ago, but he's been on the couch. Obviously he's probably still kicking, practicing, staying in shape, and that's why the Niners decided to sign him. But this game could come down to a kicker who we've never seen kick in a 49ers uniform before, and it's a little sketchy thought for me.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's fair. That's fair, especially just given the way that the kicker could have very much impacted the game last week. Could you imagine he was thrown in there and then he missed in the situation that you could have had a kick field goal? That would have been interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, man. It's a little sketchy. What do you got going on your channel, bud?
We'll see if we get another show here, to wrap out the week, meaning a post-game show on Friday, a little bit of obviously a weird schedule with Thursday Night Football. Hoping we get a post-game one on Friday, hopefully tomorrow morning. And then if not, we'll get one over the weekend. And then we're on to one of the more fun weeks, I'll say, of the season when we play Kansas City next week. But can't look too far ahead. We've got a fun one tonight.
Yeah, man. I'm looking forward to that Kansas City game as well. But yeah, not unless we don't win tonight. If we don't win tonight, I'm gonna be dreading that game because if it can't be Seattle, I don't see how we beat the Chiefs. But it's the NFL any single week. One thing is you look at the schedule for this season, before the season, and you look at 16 games the 49ers should win, and then the Chiefs, right? But now, as the season's been going on, you see 2 losses to teams the 49ers should have beat. Now, the Vikings, you could argue they should have beat them as well, but they seem to be a really good team this year. But Cardinals and Rams, they absolutely should have beat. So it's very hard to predict, what they're going to do. I don't think we have seen the full potential of the 49ers yet. And I don't know. Hopefully we see it tonight. I want to ask you one more question. I'm waiting for Chris McCurdy to show up, but are you confident that Brock Purdy turn this around? Do you have a good feeling about that? Because he's not looking like himself so far this year.
I do. And the reason I do is because we've seen the good this year with that week 3 loss to the Los Angeles Rams where he was on point. Right now, I think he's trying to navigate a different style of football. He noticed himself, right? He's got the most time to throw in the NFL this year, and it's because he wants to scramble. The unfortunate part is, as he tries to do that, there's some times where it gets a little too, a little too hectic, and he's trying to navigate that right now. I think once you find a good balance between his scrambling ability and the need to just play football, I think that's where he's going to start taking the next step, because you want to make sure that you're adding value to the team while also not taking any value back with that added talent. And so I think that that's the main thing Purdy's going to have to figure out. But there are things, you're right, that he hasn't looked like himself this year. But you also wonder, if these ebbs and flows come early in the season, is that better to position him for a late season run, knowing that he's going to see on film what happened the first few weeks and be able to grow from it?
Yeah, man, I hope you're right. Rohan, I appreciate it. Make sure you guys are all subscribed to Rohan Chakravarthy on YouTube, as well as following his articles on Niner Nation. I am going to play my great sponsors commercial. His name is Chris McCurgy. And then when we get back, guess what? We will have Chris McCurgy. Rohan, I appreciate you, man. Also, I should remind everybody before we dive into this, tomorrow I will have Wayne Breezy on the show, and we'll be doing a recap, 9 a.m. But stick around. This is some useful information. Rohan, I appreciate you very much, buddy.
Thank you.
All right. Give us 17 seconds.
The Ryan G. Hensley Show is powered by the law office of Chris McCurgy. Chris McCurgy and his team have been empowering businesses, guiding families, and taking care of the injured since 2012. In California, for estate planning, business, or personal injury, be smart and contact Chris McCurgy. Well, I'm smart, and I contact Chris McCurgy and said, come on the show, man. I feel like the people need to see you face to face. I've been running that 17-second commercial for a couple of months now, and I feel like it's time for them to meet you. How you doing, Chris?
What's up?
Say that again. I think you're breaking up. One more time. Are you doing all right? Everything good?
I'm good. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now, man. We got you.
Nice. Very good.
Yeah, man. So for everyone watching right now, we got 224 people watching. Chris McCurgy is a sponsor of the show and a 49ers fan, and he's an attorney who specializes in business law, estate planning, and personal injury. And I invited him on because this guy has a wealth of knowledge, and I said, hey, man, maybe Chris can come on and give us a couple tips. So that's why
he's going to talk about.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you here. Obviously, it's nice that you're a Niner fan, but what kind of advice would you give 49? What's the best advice that you could give 49er fans watching this in regards to, like, let's say personal injury, for example?
Sure. So one of the biggest things we see in personal injury is lack of documentation and lack of information sometimes. When you're in a car accident, emotions are pretty high in that moment. You're nervous. You're scared. If you got rear-ended in the freeway, if you got rear-ended at a red light, if there was a T-bone accident, you don't really know what to do in that situation. And it's completely understandable because the emotions are very high in that moment. What I tell my clients is, look, I hope you're never in a car accident, never again. But if you are, or if you know a family member who is, one of the biggest things you can do is compose yourself and document the scene, right? That means pull your phone out once you've gotten out of the car. If the car has moved to a safe location, pull your phone out, record what happened, record the scene, record the area, take photos of your car, take photos of the car that hit you, call the police. Now, usually, at least in California, a lot of times the police won't show up if it's a fender bender, a rear end accident, but you always want to call them in the hopes that they do show up and they do document it in a police report. And when that happens, you pull your phone out, record everything you see out there. Next thing after the accident, you got to go to the hospital, go to urgent care, go to ER, get looked at, because that initial medical documentation is very important to document your injuries at that point. After that's done, call them. And here's why. What you don't want to do in that situation is you don't want to call the insurance company and have them do a recorded statement, especially if it's the other person's insurance company, because they will reach out to you and they will want a recorded statement, and you don't want to give them a recorded statement. Every time you call an insurance company, the first thing they'll ask you is, are you okay with us recording the statement? And the answer to that question is, no, I'm not. I have counsel, and I'd like you to speak to my counsel directly. At that point, they'll reach out to me or whoever your attorney is, and the communication will be between the attorney and the insurance company. That's the biggest tips I can get you. Now, if you're driving around, if you're an Uber driver, if you're a Lyft driver, first of all, make sure you have a camera inside your car that not only documents what happens outside, but also what happens inside. Because a lot of times with Uber and Lyft drivers, we see problems with passengers, right?
Yeah.
If you're driving your own vehicle, it's a great idea to get a dash cam. That way the dash cam can record what happens in those other areas. If you're a Tesla driver, preserve the videos. Those videos definitely help in all of our cases in all personal injury matters. That would be the biggest advice I'd give you.
Appreciate that. Yeah. And Chris is great, man. If I need anything, I will reach out to Chris. Hopefully I never need anything from a personal injury standpoint, but he also does business law, will help you set up your business, and estate planning as well. So if you need anything in those 3 areas, reach out to Chris. His information is in the description as well, and it's also here on the screen. He's really good at what he does. Chris, I know you're a Niner fan. How do you feel about the Seattle game?
Man, I don't mean to be a bearer of bad news, but you and I talked about this a while ago, and I told you I had the Niners going into the bye at 3-5. In order for them to go to the bye at 3-5, they either have to beat Seattle or beat the Chiefs. I've been watching all the podcasts, and I feel like they have a chance to beat Seattle, but I truly thought they were going to beat Arizona. So right now, I'm still going to stick with my 3-5.
Okay. Yeah, man. I have them 4-4. I got them losing. I got them winning this game, losing to the Chiefs, and then beating the Cowboys. But as this season has gone, who really freaking knows? Honestly, it's a crap.
How crazy would it be if they actually, let's say, if they lost to Seattle, but they beat the Chiefs? Do you think that would be a great boost in energy and confidence at that point?
Yeah, man, and I could also see them beating the Chiefs, losing to the Cowboys. At this point, who knows the way they're playing, right? Like they haven't played up to their full ability, so it's really hard to call it, dog. Yeah,
I think as long as they enter the bye with a victory in some form, if it's the Chiefs, I think that helps turn the season around. I believe that beating the Chiefs, they haven't beaten the Chiefs in 4 years, so
yeah, the
if they
entire
beat the
time
Chiefs, that's going to be huge. Exactly. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chris, I appreciate it. Make sure you guys, the details are in the description. If you in an emergency, hit Chris McCurgy. That's my slogan. I don't know if he doesn't really like it.
I love it. Cool. Good.
All right.
Give it to me.
Yeah, I made that up for him. But no, he's a really good guy, really trustworthy person. Any situations arise, business law, estate planning, personal injury. And for a lot of you guys that have money, real estate, or older parents, or you're getting older and you want to leave things to your kids, I can't stress to you how important it is to get your estate planning affairs in order. And I'm going to be doing that with Chris McCurgy as well. Chris, man, pleasure having you on, brother, and letting everyone get to know the guy who's been in the commercials I've been playing every single episode.
Thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. And I've also heard a few people say you look like Robert Saleh. Have you heard that one before?
I've heard that a lot. And maybe he'll come back next year because of me.
Yeah,
and Grant can have me on his show, and I'll be like, "Hey, look, Grant, we made it happen."
Yeah, man.
Grant,
awesome.
Me, and Robert.
Thank you, Chris, man. I appreciate you dropping by, brother.
All right, man. Thank you. Appreciate you.
Yes, sir. All right, that's Chris McCurgy, man. He's awesome, man. I told you guys, he's great. If you need him, just hit him up, call, go to his website, whatever. You can check his reviews. He's super legit. And a sponsor of the show, you see his name behind me right there. I'm going to be on with Wayne Breezy tomorrow at 9 a.m. Make sure you guys subscribe to the Best 49ers podcast with myself and Grant Cohn. I want to share this one more time. This is my play of the day. This is what I'm playing. Jordan Mason over 18 rushing attempts. Kenneth Walker over 63.5 rushing yards. And Brock Purdy with 1 rush over 7.5. That's my play of the day. Use promo code Hensley. Go to Underdog. You guys are the best. I appreciate your support. Please hit that like button. Subscribe if you have not yet. And I will be back tomorrow morning with Wayne Breezy. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for watching the Ryan G. Hensley Show. Your support is greatly appreciated. Please visit RyanGHensley.com to learn more about me and all of my businesses. Whether it's real estate, credit repair, solar, whatever it is, you can find out more about me on that website. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on your notifications so you know when we go live. Thanks again for watching. It's much appreciated.